Good evening, you're watching MNB World. This is the special edition of News Mongolia, where we are reviewing some major events and news stories that have taken place in Mongolia in 2021. I'm Anarkan Batar.
And I'm Satan Kort here in the studio. And for our year in review, we have recap on 2021 presidential election in Mongolia, COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on education and economy of the country, and major historical anniversaries for Mongolia that were marked in 2021. And for more stories and reviews, stay tuned.
Presidential election 2021 was held on June 9, 2021. Mongolian People's Party candidate U.KHURELSUKH now won the presidential election. Under recent amendments to the Constitution of Mongolia, the president is allowed to serve a single 6-year term.
The 8th presidential election in Mongolia was held on June 9, 2021. U.KHURELSUKH from the Mongolian People's Party, Untitled from the Democratic Party, and U.KHURELSUKH from the Right Person Electoral Coalition vied for the presidency. U.KHURELSUKH from the Mongolian People's Party was elected the 6th president of Mongolia, gaining an outright majority with 823,326 votes, making up 67.76% of all votes. U.KHURELSUKH from the Right Person Electoral Coalition won 20.33% of the vote. Coming in last, Untitled of the Democratic Party, which was widely known to be experiencing division, won 5.99% of all votes. There were 71,937 people, making up 5.92% of all voters who cast blank ballots as a form of protest. Voter turnout was 59.35%, with only 1,216,246 of all 2,041,985 eligible voters casting ballots. The turnout was reported to be an all-time low for a Mongolian presidential election. The 2021 presidential election was carried out with a budget of 26 billion Mongolian tugurs, significantly higher than the 2017 election budget of 14.9 billion Mongolian tugurs. Presidential elections have been held every 4 years since the first election in 1993. However, with the latest amendments to the Constitution of Mongolia approved in December 2019, presidents will now be appointed for a single 6-year term instead of a renewable 4-year term.
After winning the 2021 presidential election this year, the newly elected president attended the 76th session of the UN General Assembly, the COP26 World Leaders Summit, and paid an official visit to Russia. President U.KHURELSUKH shared Mongolia's views on global peace, security, sustainable development, good governance, the economy, society, and health, particularly fighting and mitigating the challenges and impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The President of Mongolia, U.KHURELSUKH, attended the opening of the general debate of the 76th session of the UN General Assembly, which began on September 21st in New York City. President U.KHURELSUKH stressed that Mongolia's accession to the United Nations in 1961, ensuring the country's independence and sovereignty, and becoming a full member of the international community was an important milestone in the country's history. He reaffirmed that as an active member of the United Nations, Mongolia is committed to continuing to contribute to promoting international peace and security, fostering green development, combating climate change, and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Speaking about climate change, the president called for fighting climate change by using modern science and technology, as well as best practices and traditional experiences, drawing on lessons from the Mongolia's traditional nomadic civilization, respecting nature and treating it with care. With those values in mind, he announced that Mongolia was launching a campaign to plant 1 billion trees by 2030. After the UN General Assembly, President U.KHURELSUKH attended the COP26 World Leaders Summit held in Glasgow on November 1st and delivered a statement. He announced that Mongolia raised its target for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, a main cause of climate change, to 22.7% by 2030 by updating its national determined contributions. He noted that by introducing advanced technology and innovation and increasing funding, there is an opportunity to increase the commitment point to 27.2%. The president noted that Mongolia's 1 billion trees campaign would be a contribution to the international community's efforts to combat climate change, increase the absorption of greenhouse gases, reduce poverty, and combat desertification through economic means, protecting the health of children and women who are the most vulnerable to climate change, and improving the overall quality of life. Mongolia is also committed to spending at least 1% of its GDP to mitigate the adverse effects of climate change and desertification each year. President CHURELSUKH flew to Moscow on December 15 to pay an official visit to the Russian Federation. It was his first official visit to a foreign country after becoming president in July. During the two-day visit, President CHURELSUKH held talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to exchange views on a wide range of bilateral cooperation issues. A joint declaration on the 100th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and Russia was issued, and cooperation documents in some sectors were signed. This year marked the 100th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between two countries, with Moscow becoming the first foreign power to formally recognize Mongolia's sovereignty in 1921. The two presidents said that Russia and Mongolia would continue to boost bilateral cooperation in a range of spheres. According to the Kremlin, Putin said the joint political declaration signed sets clear guidelines aimed at further deepening ties in various fields of interaction. Putin noted that Russia remains one of Mongolia's largest foreign trade partners despite pandemic-induced challenges, adding that mutual trade grew by 24% in the first 9 months of this year.
Another story that is related to economic and financial situation of the country. In November, the Parliament of Mongolia approved the 2022 state budget with a projected 16.4 trillion Mongolian turuk in state revenue and 18.2 trillion Mongolian turuk in total expenditures. In other words, the 2022 state budget was approved with a deficit of 2.4 trillion Mongolian turuk.
During the November 12 plenary session of the Parliament of Mongolia, legislators held a fourth discussion of the proposed 2022 state budget, the 2022 budget for the Social Insurance Fund, the 2022 budget for the Health Insurance Fund, and the 2022 budget for the Future Heritage Fund. By cutting costs and making changes to the current financing mechanism for public services, the government has set several major objectives for next year's budget, such as improving the accessibility of quality education and healthcare services, increasing the number of employment opportunities, increasing the profits of the Future Heritage Fund, and reducing traffic congestion in Ulaanbaatar. Despite a deficit of 2.4 trillion Mongolian turuks, which is equal to 5.1% of GDP, the government estimates the country's economy will grow by 5% in the coming year.
In 2021, Mongolia became the third most affected country in East Asia by COVID cases per capita, after Japan and South Korea. This year, COVID-19 cases in Mongolia reached their peak in June, and 2 major lockdowns were approved by the government of Mongolia.
Mongolia reported its first death from COVID-19 on December 16, 2020, according to the Ministry of Health. The patient was a 76-year-old woman who had been receiving medical treatment at Ulaanbaatar's Bayandzurh District General Hospital. Her passing was considered to be the first COVID-19 related death in Mongolia. On April 8, Prime Minister Oyungerden announced that the government had decided to impose a nationwide lockdown to curb the steep surge in local COVID-19 cases. The government's decision came after more than 500 COVID-19 infections were being reported daily, mostly in capital Ulaanbaatar, which is home to over half of the country's 3.3 million people. The government decided to enter into the red level, the highest level of severity in terms of the spread of COVID-19, and impose a strict lockdown until April 25th, Prime Minister Oyungerden said at a press conference. During this time, a one-time stimulus of 300,000 Mongolian turuk was provided to every Mongolian citizen. At that time, Mongolia has registered 13,780 COVID-19 cases with 22 related deaths. Most of the confirmed cases were locally transmitted. High numbers of local transmissions had been reported in Ulaanbaatar and in 18 of the country's 21 provinces, making the country one of the most highly infected countries per capita in Asia, alongside South Korea and India. By the end of December, the national tally of COVID-19 cases surpassed 388,000 and the death toll surpassed 2,000. So far, around 66% of Mongolia's population of 3.4 million have received 2 COVID-19 vaccine doses, while around 862,000 people have had a booster shot.
Because of the pandemic, Mongolian school children were forced to stay at home for nearly 2 years. A 2021 study showed that around 50% of school-age children were left behind in terms of learning. In September 2021, the government decided to open schools with a combination of online and in-person learning. Attempts to bridge the learning gap are still being made during the ongoing pandemic. Mongolia's first COVID-19 case was reported in March 2020. Since then, the education sector has slowed down due to on and off lockdowns and was forced to incorporate digital learning. However, this has resulted in mixed outcomes. In the 2020 to 2021 school year, 70% of lessons were delivered to students through TV broadcasts and online. However, these programs didn't fully reach students who live in rural areas or those without access to the internet and smart devices. The study conducted in early 2021 showed that around 50% of students were left behind because of this lack of access to remote learning tools. In the case of elementary school children, they couldn't fully learn how to read and write. In September 2021, the Ministry of Education officially opened schools, universities, and kindergartens. However, school children were required to take classes online and in person. The hybrid learning model has been presenting new challenges for keeping up in class. There is a significant mental health cost for children and teens who have been isolated for a long time. A survey conducted by the Ministry of Education indicated that 68% of the young people surveyed had experienced loneliness, 59% felt distressed, and 42% had experienced anxiety. Children ages 6 to 13 showed irritability and became socially awkward due to a lack of face-to-face interaction.
During the lockdown, children experienced a lack of social contact and playtime with their peers. For instance, the first graders of 2019 went back to school for third grade after staying at home for 2 years. That means they haven't adapted to the school and social environment, and their social skills are hindered. Therefore, the main focus of the psychologists is to help those children get accustomed to school life.
Due to the pandemic situation, the Ministry of Education decided to start winter break in early December. Schools and universities will reopen in February 2022.
Like education situation in the country, pandemic has had major economic consequences as well as all over the world. Mongolia was hit hard by those consequences in 2021. Let's take a look at the next short story.
On October 14th, the government of People's Republic of China decided to close its international border as it was making preparations to host Beijing Winter Olympics. The Winter Games are scheduled to take place on February 4th through 21st, 2022 with domestic audience. The closure of China's border has been having a major impact on Mongolia's economy. In Mongolia, congestion at the border has led to higher costs for various imported products. According to the Russian Asian Association of Manufacturers and Entrepreneurs, prices for agricultural products have risen by 20% in the past 3 months. On December 10, 2021, 150 vehicles that had been stuck at the southern border's Iranian checkpoints for 60 days began moving to the checkpoint's transfer zone. On December 14th, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Mukhjin reported that import operations at China's Iranian border checkpoints would be resumed in several phases.
The 100th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Mongolia and the Russian Federation was also marked on November 5, 2021. To commemorate the anniversary, 92 events were held in the areas of politics, defense, trade, the economy, culture, science and the humanitarian exchanges.
On November 5, 1921, a treaty of friendship was signed by the two countries, establishing diplomatic relations. The Soviet Red Army assisted in the victory of the Mongolian Revolution of 1921, which led to the foundation of the Mongolian People's Republic in 1924. For the next 7 decades, until Mongolian Democratic Revolution of the 1990s, Mongolia maintained close ties with the Soviet Union, with its economic model inspired by socialism. The two countries signed a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement in 2019 during Russian President Vladimir Putin's state visit to Mongolia, bringing Moscow and Ulaanbaatar even closer together. The two countries are increasing their collaboration in sectors such as the economy, energy, and climate change response. The energy sector has always been a crucial sector in Mongolian-Russian ties. Russia supplies 92% of the energy Mongolia consumes, mostly fuel. Mongolia's government took a proactive approach in 2019 and signed a memorandum of understanding with the Russian Federation to build an extension of Russia's Power of Siberia 2 gas line, crossing Mongolian territory into China. The mega project includes 1,942 kilometers of trunk lines and is considered to be a tangible expression of Mongolia's political position, as the pipeline could also be built without passing through Mongolia. In commemoration of the 100th anniversary, a total of 92 events, including academic conferences, high-level meetings, photo exhibitions, were organized throughout 2021 by the Russian Embassy in Ulaanbaatar and the Mongolian Embassy in Moscow. The main celebration was held on November 5th, the day of the establishment of diplomatic relations. Major events included a performance by the Russian State Academic Dance Ensemble at the Mongolian Central Palace of Culture, the unveiling of commemorative stamp dedicated to the 100th anniversary, and a special reception held at the Embassy of Mongolia in Moscow. Another major event marking the anniversary was President JUKHURELSUKH's state visit to the Russian Federation in mid-December. The two countries' presidents held an official meeting and issued a joint declaration to further develop bilateral ties.
Another important event is that the year 2021 marked the 60th anniversary of Mongolia joining the United Nations. Mongolia's admission to the UN is considered significant in Mongolian history, as it marked an important step for sealing the nation's independence and expanding foreign ties. On October 27, 1961, Mongolia became the 101st member of the United Nations. However, the road to being acknowledged by the world's largest intergovernmental organization wasn't smooth. Mongolia made its first attempt to join the UN in 1946, a year after the end of World War II. By overcoming geopolitical challenges and after delivering membership requests 5 times, Mongolia was finally approved after 15 years. By joining the UN, Mongolia secured its independence and sovereignty with world recognition. Also, Mongolia gained its chance to make its voice heard through the international platform. Since 1961, the UN has been cooperating in Mongolia's development in social, economic, and political arenas, and in major areas. Today, Mongolia is considered an active member of the UN. As one of the world's 32 landlocked developing countries, Mongolia is actively involved in matters concerning LLDCs. In 2009, the first Intergovernmental Research Center for Landlocked Developing Countries, the international think tank for LLDCs, was launched in Ulaanbaatar by the UN and the Mongolian government. In the past 60 years, the UN has launched many projects in Mongolia through its 11 UN agencies. The main areas of collaboration between the UN and Mongolia have targeted refining the legal environment for social equality and protection, decreasing poverty, empowering rural women and girls, preserving ecosystems, and social and environmental issues such as health, education, the economy, and human well-being. Many of these projects are ongoing and have expanded their scope under the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. To mark the celebration of the 60th anniversary of Mongolia joining the UN, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs organized UN Week from October 20th through 27th. The celebration included a variety of events such as tree planting, the release of a commemorative stamp, an art and essay competition, research conference, photo exhibition, a documentary film and book launch, and special TV programs. One of the highlights of these events was the presentation of a special gift from Mongolian high school students. They wrote the UN Charter in Mongolian script and presented it to the UN. Mr. Tapan Mishra, UN Resident Coordinator in Mongolia, noted, Mongolia has a big ambition to achieve sustainable development, looking beyond 2030, having its vision after 2050, with Vision 2050 adopted by Parliament in May of last year. The UN and other partners have joined forces with the government in its efforts to achieve the SDGs in Mongolia. For this purpose, we are currently in the process of developing a new UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for the next 5 years.
Well, that is all for our special edition. We will see you in 2022 with more stories and updates.
And don't forget to tune in to MNB World. Have a nice holiday and Happy New Year!